Well, welcome back into the Mid-Norfolk garden this afternoon. Just got a little bit of daylight left and we've got a job that we are going to have a go at. Just look at this invasive weed that's coming through from the ditch on the other side of this hedge with the windbreak fencing in front of it. This is a pernicious weed which is called butterbur. Now, it's not uncommon here in Norfolk, and it's a common hedgerow plant. It does actually have a little bit of a flower on it. Let me just show you that. That's typical for what it puts up, and it usually does that at this time of year. Nothing particularly spectacular, and there's very few of them. What this does cause a problem with is just crowding out everything else that we're wanting to grow on this bank, and you can see that it's starting to extend really quite a long way into the garden and even onto the path where we've not been mowing for the last 6 months. Now, butterbur is a really difficult, pernicious weed to get rid of. It's grown as a rhizome that spreads underground, and these roots can go down 2 to 3 feet, so digging it out is near impossible. You can use all sorts of herbicides on it, Roundup, all sorts of other things are a possibility, but we've seen a tip online where we can just use ordinary distilled vinegar on this, and they claim that it knocks this back beautifully. So we're going to try that here this afternoon. So we're going to try a couple of different techniques for you. I've got some distilled malt vinegar courtesy of Sainsbury's here, paintbrush and a jar. I'm going to try just painting it onto these leaves, and we're also going to fill this little sprayer, and Kate's going to have a go spraying some of these areas of leaf to see which is the most effective method. So we'll split ourselves into 2 areas and give it a go, and then come back and have a look in a week's time to see if it's had any effect at all. I am skeptical about this one.
So am I.
I've been trying to get rid of this weed in this area for years now, both digging it out and spraying it with chemicals. We don't want to use chemicals anymore in this garden, we really don't, and if this works it will be fantastic news, because vinegar's a nice safe product and it's not going to do any harm to us or any of the wildlife living in this garden. So let's get these prepped up and have a go.
So far the most effective method we found is to actually dig the weed out and dig all the root out, but that's quite labour intensive, and unfortunately we thought we'd got rid of most of it, but as you can see it's come back, and we have a lot of bulbs in here, so we're quite reluctant to dig it over to get the root out. But we'll show you an area where we did dig it out 10 years ago, and actually that has been the most effective method so far. Well, this is an area that was dug over completely and all the root removed about 10 years ago, and as you can see it was very effective. There's none of it left. Unfortunately it was taking us so long, and it was actually costing quite a bit because we were paying somebody to dig it, and it was very slow, laborious work. We stopped about halfway down and thought, oh, there must be an easier way, because it took weeks and weeks and weeks. But I just wish now with hindsight we'd carried on, because as you can see the bit we didn't do is absolutely covered in it. Then if you look the other way,
it's actually flowering quite nicely here at the back.
It just smothers everything now.
Yeah,
it's coming
spectacular.
out into the grass.
And as Kate says, look, it's starting to come out onto the path area, which will be knocked back by mowing. That's why it hasn't extended out over that period.
Plus it gets a lot bigger than this. This is January, and look at it. By the end of the summer these things will be enormous. They'll be about a foot tall, some of them, and they really will smother all the other plants and the bulbs in here. Okay,
let's go and get that vinegar sorted out and do a test patch, and then see if that's going to be a solution to this problem or if we're going to have to start digging again. Right, Kate's going to do this test area here. So this bit area going down to the start of the rose arch support, she's going to spray. And this area just around the corner, this first bit here, I'm going to see how I get on starting from this end, and I'm going to paint those leaves with the vinegar just on the upper surface, and we'll see which has the best effect. So here we go, just painting a good coating onto the top of the leaves. Great thing about using vinegar is you don't have to worry too much about if it goes onto the soil, so it shouldn't do any harm. You do have to make sure you've got some eye protection on if you're using this, particularly the sprayer, so you're not getting it anywhere on your body, and wash your hands well after you've used it. There we go. I'll continue on now and we'll see how we get on over the next week with these plants. Well, we've come back to our area where we were doing the experimenting with vinegar and using that as a treatment to try and get rid of this weed that we've got in this bank, and initially thought it hasn't had any effect at all, but compared to the area just to the side, which is lush and green, this is the area that I painted with a paintbrush, and you can see we've got a fair bit of dieback at this stage on the leaves with some browning off. It's certainly not killed them down to the root, but it's certainly done them no good at all, and I'm just wondering if a repeat treatment or a little more time may actually be of benefit to them. I was so skeptical about this, but look, the difference is absolutely marked. Less so on the area where we sprayed. This is the area that we used the spray on. There is a little bit of browning back, but it's not anywhere near as marked as the area where we painted it on, and I presume with a thicker coat of the vinegar. Again, in the area still growing away, just with a little bit of brown marking on the leaves, but certainly still looking like it will probably get going again rather than drying off. So could this be a potential treatment for this if we repeat it? I was hoping the spraying was going to be the most effective, because obviously it's the easier to apply. Hand painting these leaves with a paintbrush is fiddly, time consuming, and, well, frankly quite smelly with the vinegar. Not a particularly unpleasant or pleasant job, but a bit of a burdensome one, and I've got an awful lot of it to do. So spraying would have been really the best and easiest way if it had worked as well. But I'm going to have a look again in a week's time just to see if this effect is sustained and whether it's actually decreased the amount of leaf and growth of this plant, and if so, then I think I will persist and try another application to see what effect that has. Doesn't appear to have had any deleterious effects to the surrounding grass or other weeds that we've got coming up in here, just where it was applied to the broadleaf deep-rooted variety. So quite optimistic actually, from being very skeptical. I think we may persist with this and see if it has a better effect next week.